Okay, guys, are we actually rolling? I made an error and had some technical difficulties here, but I think we are on. Can y'all hear me, see me, all those kinds of things? It appears that we are live. I'm hopeful that you guys are going to be able to hop on. I kind of messed up this live stream at the beginning. I'm sorry. I need to get better at doing the kind of setup for these things. I'm going to pop in the comments here real quick and make sure that y'all can see me. Okay, I think we're live. Sorry for the delay, guys. Um, Matt Reisinger in Austin, Texas, and if you've been following the news, it has absolutely been nuts in Texas over the last couple weeks. Okay, here we go. Hyperstrike, death investigator. Oh my gosh, all the way down in Aggie land. I'm seeing you live. I'm seeing a bunch of comments stream in. Sorry, y'all. I apologize for the tech issues 9 minutes after, and we're finally getting going here. Here's the scoop. Texas has been crazy. And I've gotten a bunch of notes from y'all in YouTube comments, on the chat, all kinds of things. It, it's been crazy because we're just totally unprepared for this kind of weather. I mean, I've got a lot of you guys that are friends and fans from up north that are like, what's the big deal in Texas? Why is everyone freaking out? Why is the news even covering this, right? It gets to 10 degrees all the time in my climate. Um, oh, I've got two microphones and there's an active echo. Let me see if I can. Does that help on the echo, guys? Are y'all still getting the echo? Audio issues, echo going. Okay, guys, 1 second. Let me head over to settings real quick and see if I can figure out what's up on the echo. You know, wonder if it's my AirPods. Let me take these out. Hmm.
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
see
see
if
if
that
that
fixes
fixes
it.
it.
Does that fix it, guys? Are y'all better now? I'm gonna assume that that fixed it. Hmm. Okay. Anyways, gosh, I've got to get my tech issues handled. Okay. Hyperstrike. Is it cold enough for you to start stuffing fiberglass between your ribs yet? Funny enough, we stuffed fiberglass into our meter box because I actually didn't have a meter box yet. So at my house under construction across the street, my uh, my meter can was basically fully exposed, and so we put Rockwell bats on top of it and then bricks on top of that. And so far, we've been good to go. So that's good news. Here's the kind of catch up as to what's happened in Texas. Last week we lost power because of some ice storms and some bad weather. And for us, bad weather means 28 and rainy, which means we've got ice, down trees, almost no underground power in Austin. Almost everything's above ground. So we had a bunch of lines that went down. And on Thursday, my power went out because of the ice and storms at my current house. And I don't know if you saw the video that I published a while back, the Champion sponsored. They gave me one of their 13 kW generators, and I made a great video about how to size it and what to do. And man, my wife was absolutely thrilled that I had that generator at the house because we actually, in my neighborhood where I am, we're out for 52 hours because of ice and storms. And yeah, with that generator, it was amazing. That natural gas generator just fired right up. I have an automatic transfer switch, and I was good to go, whereas my entire neighborhood was totally out for that period of time. And in fact, since I've gotten a bunch of texts and calls from neighbors saying, "Hey, tell me about your generator and how I get one for my house." And then we were back up and running through the weekend. But what happened was the temperature started dipping, and that what's the name of the storm? Is it? Uri, I think is the name of the storm, came and just brought bitter cold. I mean, we were down to 3 or 4 or 5 degrees above 0 Fahrenheit here in Texas overnight, a couple of nights, and the wind chill was like -10, which is just absolutely unheard of. And this is the part that the Northerners have a hard time kind of understanding. But here in Texas, we're just so used to barely touching 32 degrees that most people have a standard hose bib at their house, a non frost free. If something like this, let's say, sticks out of the wall and they put an insulated cover on top of that hose bib, and that's all you need for years. In fact, the last time it got this cold was 1989. So it's been a long, long time since we've done that. Now, you Northerners, on the other hand, are used to seeing these guys, which is a frost-free hose bib. This is a Woodford Sioux Chief. I've also used a bunch of those over the years. And as you Northerners know, this unit, when it shuts off, when I rotate this valve, you probably can't see it on my camera. I'm actually moving this valve all the way back in here, and we're shutting the water off into the wall by 8 or 10 inches. Well, if you don't have those in Texas and your wall's here and your shut off is right here, that means that this is going to freeze, this is going to freeze, and most likely if it's copper, it's going to burst. And that's exactly what's happened, especially as we've kind of thawed out today. The weather's been a little bit nicer. We've had a bunch of burst pipes and craziness. So I'm not sure if you can see this, but this is the kind of thing that's happening all over town. This is my neighbor up the street. They thawed their hose bib. It's copper pipe. That thing was cracked, was spurring out water once the ice dam plug left, and they were in trouble. Luckily, a shark bite cap saved the day, which was huge, and I keep those in 3/4 and 1/2 inch. And so that was a pretty easy fix, was a 3/4 cap on that thing, and we were good to go. But the biggest issue for us here in Texas has been the blackouts. There's all kinds of speculation on why. There's been a bunch of political talk about it, but ultimately, I think it boils down to is we're just not set up in Texas for really cold weather, including our power plants. And as you know, nuclear, natural gas, and coal plants need water for cooling. And if those water lines are susceptible to freezing, that means those systems are going to have to get shut down. And from what I understand, which I'm certainly not an expert in this, that's a huge reason why we've lost so much power. The other night when I was here hanging out, Monday night I guess it was, I had power, but 6 people who work for me were out of power, and I got on the Austin Energy website just to kind of view how many power outages were happening around town. And I'm going to show you what I saw on the website if I can find it. But just an absolutely insane amount of people were without power. So check this out. If you can see that 58% of Austin Energy had power, which means that 40% of their customers didn't have power. And I think it's on the bottom of your screen here. 200,000 homes around the Austin metro area were without power. And this is a night when it was, 10 degrees out. If it's 10 degrees out and you don't have power, you're really in trouble, especially in a town like this that has really poor insulation, really poor standards for construction. We barely get to freezing most winters, and if we do, it's only 1 or 2 nights, and during the daytime it gets back up to 50 degrees. Just incredibly unusual, and that's really what's happening around town with what's going on here. Is really the blackouts have been the biggest portion of the problem. Now couple that with, I think it's been 5 days in a row up until today where it didn't get above 32 during the day. I think today's the first day it actually poked above 32 for the last 5 days. That's really what's been crazy. And the other thing that I've seen all over the place happening because of the loss of power is we have a lot of tankless water heaters on the outside of our homes. I'm sorry to admit that there's my tankless water heater right there on the outside of my house. And I don't know if you saw the video I published last week on how to how to kind of mitigate those pipes coming outside of my envelope to there. But even with all that mitigation, I didn't um, drip my pipes the first night when it was like 10 degrees out. And as a result, my unit froze up and it was really, really bad the next day in terms of getting it thawed. But because I think I credit having PEX in there, because I had PEX, I was able to thaw that and really not have a problem, which was huge for me. The other thing, though, that's been happening all over town is this right here. Let's see if you can see this. Andrew, who's the moderator here and works with me, took this video in his neighborhood. That's two exterior tankless units that are absolutely raining water down from below. They're mounted up kind of high, which is silly. And there's a ton of pipe showing, which is also silly. But once you lose power, those tankless units, if they're mounted outside, like these are, it just means that they're going to freeze. The inside copper boiler system is going to freeze, and you're totally in trouble. I mean, at that point, you've got a $1,500 brick on your wall that's just going to rain out water, and all you can do is turn off the water to it. I've also been complacent in that. You know, I've lived here 16 years now. I've only seen one other freeze that was as bad as this, but it was only for a short 24 or 48-hour period of time. And a couple of tankless units, including my own that I had installed, froze, but I was able to thaw them all for all those customers the very next day with a heat gun. But in this kind of weather, especially with no power, that's it, man. Things are bad, and that's really been the story around town. The other thing that I think might happen to us in Texas is I suspect that we're going to have a bunch of water outages that are going to happen as we thaw. You know, when I started watching the news a week ago when we were talking about this weather coming, I heard several stories about 1989 here in Austin, Texas. I didn't live here. My wife did. She was in high school at that time here. They had a similar 2 or 3 day freeze below zero multiple days in a row, and 350 water mains busted from frozen pipes. And as a result, a vast amount of the city was without water. You know, something like a third of the city had no active water for several days. So I got on Instagram today and told all my friends who follow me on Instagram, fill your bathtub, fill every water bottle you've got, because I think that could be the next big, tragedy that we have coming to us, let alone all the people that have been without water. Um, Interesting. Mark's got a question. Mark Bradley, I just kind of caught my eye. Are my customers angry at me? Um, no, maybe a little bit, yes. But for instance, the very first house I built in town 15 years ago, I put two exterior tankless units on that house and then put one on my house the following year. It's the second owner, super nice people. I just talked to them a couple hours ago. Both their units busted because they had no power. I mean, people understand. I don't think that there's necessarily criminal intent when it's something like this that happens every 20 plus years. But I can tell you that the second half of this live program, I want to talk about what I would do differently or what I would recommend others do differently. And a big part of that is obviously don't be dumb. You know, once you've experienced an event like this, you realize that it's just not wise to have anything on the outside in the wintertime being susceptible to freezing. So absolutely, that's what I'm gonna do differently is a big one. I'm trying to think if I've got any other interesting stories to tell you before I switch to what else I would do differently. Did you guys ever see the video that I made called an emergency plumbing toolkit? I made a video maybe 3 years ago when we had some cold weather about this topic. And interestingly enough, in the video, I had a bunch of Amazon links. You guys probably know I do Amazon affiliate links. That's part of my income. But I got on Amazon today and I thought, my kit is low on 1/2 inch shark bites. I wonder if they have any available. I was shocked that Amazon did. The delivery time is a little bit low on some of these. But regardless of affiliate links, you may consider getting on Amazon or supplyhouse.com, some of those places, and order up at least 3 or 4 half-inch end stops, or what do they call them? Not end stops. What's the word I'm looking for? Caps in both half-inch and 3/4. And then you also might get some couplings, like I was showing a minute ago. Here's what I'm talking about: a cap, an end cap, so that if you had a busted pipe, you could cut it and cap it, and at least the rest of the house would have water. Um, they're kind of expensive online. They're going to be certainly cheaper in the store. Here's a 4-pack that's like $30 on Amazon. But if you needed that part, especially in an emergency, it'd be worth every penny of that. I mean, a plumber's going to charge you a minimum of $100 to come out, and my guess is you're going to have a waiting list 100 people deep, no matter which plumbing company you call. So they're going to have a hard time making it out to you. Somebody's at my front door. I don't know who that is. Other stories that I would tell you: there have been people that have been out of power for multiple days that haven't had any problems, and that's interesting to think about as well. For instance, my mother and father-in-law live in Northwest Hills, in the house my wife grew up and built in the 70s. I actually know the builder's son, who's still building today. He's my age. And that house is built relatively well. It has a standard water heater, a gas atmospherically vented unit, which is up in the attic. Not a great place. And my father-in-law, even though he lost power for almost 3 days, was really good at dripping both the hot and the cold lines on all of his faucets inside and on all of his exterior hose bibs. He didn't lose anything. He was good to go. I thought that was pretty darn interesting because he was so diligent about dripping, and that incoming water temperature here in Austin, even on the coldest day of the year, is something like 45 to 55 degrees. That means that even if it's 10 degrees out and you've got a little bit of flow through there and it's being replaced with 50-degree water, you're going to not freeze. And that was huge. I think a lot of the freezing issues are people that didn't do that. The other thing that I did and that I recommended to people was on your exterior hose bibs, even if they're not a frost-free hose bib, thaw them every single day so that you'll keep water going through there and you won't have that plug of water backing up in your house and splitting. And ultimately, I think the people that have copper are much more prone to splitting pipes than somebody who's running PEX on their house. I saw a comment here from Dean Constantine. Is Home Depot open there? A bunch of stores have been shut down for multiple days. HEB, which is our main grocery store, they were closed for several days in a row near me, and I got online to see if anyone else was open. And all 6 stores that were within a 10-mile radius, not that you could get out very easily, but I did in my 4-wheel drive, they were all closed. Home Depot is open today. I have a buddy that went there. He said every shark bite fitting was sold out, so there was really nothing left for him to get to try and fix it. Oh, interesting. One of my past clients is texting me, Alex, I'm watching, brother. If you're seeing this, thanks for the text, man. Glad to hear that you guys have had no breakages or problems. They were out of power for 48 hours. Dang, Alex, that's crazy, man. Hopefully, Lauren and the kids are doing okay. Gosh, I haven't. I think you had a birthday, Alex, that I missed this past week. Anyways, let's switch gears for a minute and let's talk about what I do differently. I also want to get on and answer some of your questions. You guys have been chatting it up, and so I apologize if I've missed your questions. There's been a ton of questions out there. Gosh, I'm not even sure how to sort through all these. There's so many. Let me while you guys are posting questions, I'll see if Andrew, who's moderating for me, Andrew, text me if you've got one or two you think would be a really good question. Otherwise, I'll kind of keep my eyes on questions, but let me talk about what I do differently. I think that's kind of an interesting story about what's going on here. First off, frost-free hose bibs. I get laughed at, honestly, around town for thinking about using a frost-free hose bib. They're just so unusual to see here in Austin, Texas. But obviously that would have prevented some massive problems had people had frost free. Another version of a frost free hose bib that I really like too, and that I actually did on my house and have done a couple videos on, is this one here. This is the Aqua hose bib. These guys are based out of Seattle, and they make a kind of a sleek unit that looks a little nicer, but they have kind of a secret ingredient I do want to mention. This is their frost-free hose bib unit right here. This is the 4-inch model, which would work perfect in Texas. You could even use it in a 2x4 wall. So your hose bib is going to come in here, but it's actually going to shut off back here in the wall. And they make these in 6-inch deep, 8-inch deep, all the way up to 12-inch deep models, which are very, very deep. But one thing that's kind of cool about Aqua that is different from most of the hose bibs out there, besides, of course, this lack of a connector, you actually need to insert something like this in here. And I've heard a couple of you say that you don't like the idea of having a specialized piece compared to a standard one. I get that. But one thing that's really interesting about these is these are stainless steel, and this is copper. And I did a video, I don't know, a year or two ago that these guys sponsored, where I put both of these units through a freezer and then filled the freezer with dry ice, so it was like minus 100 out. And the copper, because it's such a good transmitter of heat, had a giant condensation ball form on here, and this one didn't because it was stainless steel. And stainless steel is a terrible conductor, right? You wouldn't use stainless steel wiring in your house. Because this stainless does not conduct that heat very well. The same is true about cold. So when this shuts off back here, you're not having that cold radiate back through the stainless steel device. So a little plug for Aqua, my friends over there. But another thing that I'm going to do, regardless of using frost-free hose bibs, back in the 90s when I started construction in Washington, D.C., we didn't use any frost-free hose bibs in Washington, D.C. We used a standard hose bib, and we had an inside shutoff valve, usually in the basement. Now, one issue we have here is we don't have basements, right? Which means that I don't have a space to put a shutoff valve without putting some kind of an access door in the drywall. But if I had a standard hose bib and I have an inside shutoff, that means that I can shut the water off to this hose bib. And then usually those shutoffs have a little bleeder valve, so you can bleed in a little bit of air, which means now I can drain that water out. I think that'd be handy to have even if you had a frost-free hose bib, because you could turn those things off and drain these if you knew that you were going to have this 5-degree weather out, or if you ever needed to change this, like my friend up the street that had a busted pipe. Super easy to change if you have a shutoff on there. So that's something I think I'm going to start adding. Hard to do though in every house, right? Especially when I don't have a basement. I'm going to try and find a closet, a place that I can do a shutoff valve, that sort of thing. A couple of you asked me about my new house. Thank you, Andrew, for filtering comments for me. My new house made it through this craziness just fine. I have 2 little 1,000-watt space heaters going in there, and that's it. And my new house has done amazingly well. A big part of that is my new house has an insulated slab, and in the south, the slab, or really in the north even too, is a massive place where you're losing heat out of your houses. Major BTU loss. I took my FLIR camera into my current home, which is a standard slab on grade house. And then I took my FLIR gun into my house under construction and took some images. And I'm going to show you those in 1 second if I can pull them up. And so for instance, here's my new house right here with an insulated slab. And you can see that floor is basically the same temperature as the walls. I've got a little bit of a black line where the base of my wall hits the slab because I'm getting a little bit of thermal transfer there. But I basically have eliminated a massive amount of BTU loss at my new house under construction. And then at my current house, I put this on Instagram the other day, if you can see this. What we're showing here is this bottom slab, which is a dark color at the end, really cold, huge amount of heat loss through there. And then my 2x4 insulated wall on my current house above that is doing a decent job. You can actually see the studs. but you can see that heat loss in my slab right there. And by having an insulated slab at the new house, massive difference. I mean, that's literally cutting my need for heating down by like 30%. What else? Couple things at my house that I've been thinking about. So my new house under construction, all electric. I have no natural gas appliances whatsoever. I did that for a couple reasons. Number one, I'm gonna have a solar input. I'm gonna do a 6 kW solar array, and I'm actually talking to a very interesting DIY company about that. They're wanting to sponsor the video, but I've been wanting to do somewhere between a 5 and 8 kW solar array, and I think that I'm going to be net zero at around 6 kW at the new house. But what do I do in these kinds of outages? I mean, a solar array does nothing for you. I talked to one of my clients who has a giant, like 12K array on his roof. His power's out in that part of Austin, and his solar array is covered with snow. That's not doing any good right now. So you really do need either a propane or a natural gas fired generator. Now, natural gas, which is how my current generator is powered, is pretty darn reliable. You know, it's a transportation that runs underground. It's not really susceptible to storms. But there's a lot of talk over the last couple of days about natural gas getting shut off, and I thought, well, gosh, if the natural gas gets shut off and that's how I heat my current house, I'm in trouble. I mean, I got nothing. I've got a natural gas cooktop. I've got a natural gas furnace. There's really nothing that I can do. So at the new house, I was thinking maybe I should go propane actually, because you know propane doesn't go bad unlike gasoline. And my original plan, actually, a few months ago, was to do a propane smaller generator. You know, my new house is super efficient, so one of my Mitsubishi HVAC systems could be powered along with my kitchen, fridge, and freezer, and my garage freezer, as well as a lighting circuit with just a portable, you know, Champion 6500 watt standalone generator. And the cool thing about Champion is the portables that I have from them are dual fuel, so they'll run on either propane or gasoline. But again, propane never goes bad. Your propane barbecue tank could sit in your garage for 30 years. And if we run on propane, that means I could store a pretty decent amount of propane and be good to go. The hard part, though, is, and then of course I need to get it filled occasionally, and there is some end date on my propane if we had some really long lasting storm. So I'm kind of debating that a little bit. What do you guys think about that? If I've got natural gas at the street, am I silly not to just go ahead and pay the $30 a month tap fee to the natural gas company, but have that fuel source readily available? Or should I go to propane knowing that no one can ever shut me off? The only thing I could do is run out and potentially have plenty of storage on hand so I wouldn't run out. The other thing that I'm debating is, do I do a plug-in model, meaning a portable wheelbarrow style generator that you press a button and the battery fires it up, but you'd have to pull it out and plug it in when you have an outage, versus what I have at my house, which is a bigger unit and has an automatic transfer switch. So when my power went out last week for 52 hours, I was out of power for about, I don't know, a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Once the power goes out, the generator fires up. Once the generator gets up to its running speed, the automatic transfer switch just boom switches it over to generator power. And then it ran for 52 hours, no problem. I mean, that was awesome. My wife gave me a huge kiss and was so thankful that. I'm back, huh? Doesn't look like I'm back, but maybe I'm back. Can y'all see me? Okay. Supposedly we're back. My computer's not showing me, but I'm gonna pretend like nothing's happened. And I will apologize that my internet went down. My daughter came in and said her Zoom class for school kicked her out too. So sorry, guys. Let's see. What was I talking about? Oh, let me go back to questions. Andrew had a couple questions. Renee Goodwin, what's your experience with frozen and thawed PEX piping? Any long-term negatives? That's a great question. You know, generally speaking, PEX is able to expand and contract. And I actually did a bunch of videos 2 or 3 years ago where I froze a bunch of PEX in a freezer at my office, and I didn't see any detrimental issues with that. So I think that's a big reason to use PEX. And Uponor PEX, PEX A, which turns out I think there's another flavor or another brand of PEX A as well. For a while there, I thought Uponor was the only one, but for PEX A, I think there's some other options. I think that one's probably the most freeze resistant, meaning it'll expand and contract right back to where it was, no problem. So, you know, for anybody that's got PEX in their house, I think you're going to be automatically much, much better than someone without that. Let's see. Andrew, any other questions from the crew? Debra, generator sizing recommendations. The guys at Champion who sponsored that video with me came out with a brand new sizing tool that I really like, where you're able to kind of check off on the tool, hey, here's the things that I want to run concurrently: TV, internet router, coffee maker, gas fired furnace, or heat pump. And you kind of go through and check their list on their website, and it'll go, okay, here's what it'll work. And the cool thing about it is it'll also show you, hey, if you're going to buy just a standalone, portable unit, which again, I was planning on using it across the street, I think that you could make that work on a bigger sized unit, especially if you're just using your emergency circuits. So I don't know. My thought though is, as much as I hate to be thoroughly Texan and say bigger is better, I tend to think that running more systems and not being constrained a whole lot is the better way to go. So in my house, I put in the biggest one they make. That's a home standby generator. I think it was 13 kW, something like that. And it's been awesome. The only kind of what's the word I'm looking for? The only thing I can't run is my oven. My oven's a 50 amp circuit with an oven microwave combo. That's the only thing that's not running on mine. So, I mean, if you can do something like that, you're good to go. If you have a bigger house, Champion's biggest is 13. You're going to have to go up to Generac or Kohler or one of those other brands. I think both Generac and Kohler make fantastic units, and they go up to 20 plus kW. So even a very large house can be run by one of those. And anybody's going to make one that's going to run on either natural gas or propane. So you don't have to worry about that. B. Johnson, Minnesota. Hello from Minnesota. Our long cold snap here over a week in the minus 20 range. Oh my gosh. Froze a 4-inch Schedule 40 PVC rooftop drain. Any tips? Oh man, that stinks. That's really hard to freeze a Schedule 40 pipe too, especially a 4-inch roof drain. But with ice damming, I could see it. I mean, I think the biggest tip would be consider a heater for those. You can drop a heater into that pipe in the wintertime, and I think they make specific heaters for those. I bet if you Googled it, you could find it. But I have this image in my mind of like a heater that would like be for your fish tank. That's kind of a tube style heater with a cord connected that you could literally drop in there, melt that ice that's at the top of the pipe, and you'd be good to go. So that's probably the best bet. I don't know that if it's a 4-inch pipe, even wrapping heat tape around there is going to give you enough heat for that. So you're going to have to go to more extreme temperature or more extreme measures. They also make gutter heaters and things like that you can turn on periodically. That'd be the way to fix something like that. Golly, I can't even imagine. Minus 20 in Minnesota. That's nuts, man. I would be surprised that you have a lot of flat roofs or rooftop drains in Minnesota with the ice damming issue. I wonder if any of our clients in Austin have any rooftop drain issues with this weather. I built several flat roofed houses that have internal roof drains, and they're pretty darn bulletproof. But I don't know how ice proof they are because we're just again totally unaware and unready for that. For some reason, my comments have stopped over here, even though it looks like my live stream is going. So, Andrew, if you can hear me, throw me some more comments. Otherwise, we'll wrap this up. I don't want to keep you guys too long. We've been on for 45 minutes. Coaster, have you installed a Tesla solar roof on a house yet? I have not. I'm excited to do that someday. I think they have a really cool product. You want to take a minute and talk about Tesla Powerwall and battery backup for solar for a minute? That'd be kind of an interesting topic. I'm maybe taking this to another part that you weren't interested in, Coaster, but that client that I told you that has that big solar array, like 12 kW or 10 kW, something like that, he called me after being out of power for 48 hours and said, hey, I'd really like to do a Tesla Powerwall in my garage. And I said, well, number one, we've got to deal with not being able to make power on a snowy day because your solar cells are covered on your flat roof. Number two, most of the time, those Tesla solar walls, or power walls rather, are only sized for you to be able to run overnight. And then the solar comes back on the next day and starts charging again. So if you wanted to be able to run for multiple days during bad weather, especially when production was down, you'd have to probably size a pretty darn good system in terms of number of batteries running in series. So I don't know that they're the best solution. I think honestly for general outages, your best solution is to think about a generator. Because now you can run for however many days you need to, no issues with weather, no issues with no sun, that sort of thing. And then most of the time you're grid connected, and you're going to be able to do that. The other issue that I found when I was kind of looking into it, and in fact I'd been talking to Generac about doing their battery mounted system at my house under construction. One of the issues that I kind of ran into as I was researching it was those battery mounted systems, Tesla, Generac, all of them, they have a limited lifespan, right? Just like all batteries do, just like your hybrid cars batteries do. Right now, there's no great recycling program for those. So, here you've got a battery that's really not worth anything and is really hard to get rid of at the end of its life cycle. And just like your laptop battery, after you hit a certain number of charges, the amount of charge that will fit in there is going to get reduced. So by the time you're 6, 7, 8 years old, now you've got a reduced battery capacity. And I don't want to quote the percentage because I don't know it exactly, but I think it's something like maybe 60 or 80% of its capacity after years 6, 7, 8, something like that. So now you've got a 10-year-old battery in your garage. It's only able to power at let's say 50, 60, 70% of its original capacity. What do you do with that? Plus, that could be a pretty decent amount of space taken up out of your garage. You got to put them inside your house. So it was for those reasons plus expense that I kind of decided to shy away from that on my house. And I would say a standard natural gas or propane generator, super reliable. We've been making gas engines for years. That can be a really good way to go. Okay, one more question. Sins Warrior 16, is it going to affect the building code in the region in the future? Do you think it will affect new houses that are going to be built down south? Did I answer this one already? Yeah, I think I answered this one already, but briefly, I don't think it will affect building codes personally, but I do think that people will be more and more thinking about how do I make my house not have the same leaks that I had during the great freeze of 2021. I mean, people are going to be talking about this, my kids included, for the next 10, 15, 20 years. and how they lived through all the power outages and all the ice and the crazy temperatures. So uh, I think that this is going to be talked about a lot. The other thing that I wouldn't be surprised about, and I'm not really interested in getting into a political conversation about global warming, but our weather patterns seem like they're definitely different than when I was growing up. So I suspect that this won't be an every 50-year event. Maybe this will be an every, 5 or 10 year event. And how much would that change what you would do as a builder or as someone building a house if you thought that something like this that just happened could happen to you again in the next 5 or 10 years? Um, Bisamato, have you ever installed geothermal in any of your builds? Thoughts? Why wasn't it an option for your new home build? I have never installed geothermal down here in Austin, Texas. I've talked about it multiple times with multiple clients, and there's a couple of reasons. This is probably a whole video that could be made on this, but for Texas, I'm not a huge fan of geothermal. Couple reasons. Number one, we're incredibly rocky here. So at my house across the street under construction, I've got about 3 inches of topsoil and then a solid rock. So if I was going to put geothermal in, I'd have to be drilling rock to put that in. And rock is not a great transmitter of heat, like water, especially, or like regular soil, especially if you hit an aquifer or a well source. So geothermal, I don't believe is quite as good here in Texas because of those reasons. Another couple of reasons I don't love geothermal for Texas is we just don't do it very often. We don't have the subcontractor base. The few systems get installed here are by a contractor that does maybe 1 or 2 systems a year. Whereas if you live in Wisconsin, there's a geothermal contractor that's drilling new wells and installing new systems, 5 days a week. So you're just naturally going to be a lot more reliable and efficient when you've got a contractor who does it day in and day out. Would you want to go to a surgeon who only performs a surgery once a month, or to the eye doctor that's doing 5 laser surgeries a day? Naturally, the guy who's doing it 5 times a day is going to be much better at it than the surgeon who only does that particular surgery on a rare occasion. Um, the other thing that really tips me over on geothermal is honestly the efficiency and the abilities that the Mitsubishi VRF systems have, and Daikin and LG's in the same boat. They are so darned efficient. They can make heat down to -5 degrees outside at full capacity when they're hyperheat systems. And the outdoor compressors are so darned quiet that you just don't have the same issues that you had with heat pumps from years ago. So I think that geothermal in Texas is not a great investment. I would definitely opt for a higher end VRF system from one of the big three manufacturers. Mitsubishi is the camp that I've been on for the last 15 years, and that's what I installed in my house across the street. I think they make terrific equipment. On the other hand, though, and I say this often, be cautious. You don't want to be the same with your Mitsubishi equipment, as I said with geothermal. You don't want to be the one person who's put a Mitsubishi system in when the dealer, the installer, has never done it before or only does one every 6 months. Here in Austin, where I am, we have a great contractor that does it all the time, day in and day out, with great service, and the techs know exactly what they're doing. So it makes perfect sense for me to use a VRF Mitsubishi system in particular. But as I mentioned earlier, Daikin, LG, those guys make some great systems. Carrier's Green Speed system, I've heard really good things about. In fact, I'm doing an install of one of those coming up, so stay tuned for a video on that. I think they make terrific equipment. And, a bunch of others make really nice variable speed equipment. And if you couple that with the dehumidifier, if you've been watching my videos, you know that you can get a really good system without having to go to the expense of geothermal. And I also wonder how long that tax credit is going to be available. In fact, I actually don't know if it's currently still out there or not. All right, guys, I've been talking for 55 minutes. It's time for me to soothe my throat with a little hot tea. Check my texts and my emails. I have a feeling I'm going to be out on a couple service calls tomorrow for past clients or friends or neighbors, but Sure appreciate your support, guys. Um, Thank you for all the comments. I'm so sorry for the technical issue that I had. My live chat's been broken too because of my internet break, but it looks like I'm still broadcasting. So just want to thank you guys for all that you do to support me and the Build Show. As you know, the channel's grown a ton. We're approaching 800K on subs, which is crazy. And many of you have been longtime supporters. As you know, I started YouTube in 2008 when I had a little fledgling home building company that was just 2 or 3 years old. I started my company in '05, and YouTube's done a huge amount of blessing for me and my family. My wife also started a YouTube channel during COVID, which is nutty. And oh no, I'm hearing that the water might be shut off tonight. Holy cow. Crazy. Okay, anyways, I mentioned that earlier. I knew that could happen. If you're watching this and you're in Texas, last thought, fill up your bathtubs, fill up your water bottles. Heck, I would put glasses of water on the counter. If the water gets turned off, it's gonna get really bad really quick. Thanks again for all your support, guys. Um, Follow me on Twitter or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Build Show. It's dorky, I know, but it's my thing. All right, y'all. Have a great night. Catch y'all later.